Hello, welcome to the Q&A for DisOrient's Voices of Family Shorts program. My name is Susan Hirata, and I'll be the host for this discussion. And I'll start right in and introduce our filmmakers. So we have Wendy Wang, director, producer of Desperation, Nahyeon Lee, writer, director of 16, Eris Qian, writer, director of Mother Tongue, Joyce Liu, Countryman, writer, producer of Running Shadow, and Brian Nguyen, cinematographer of Running Shadow. So welcome to all you filmmakers. Thanks for taking the time to come on and do this Q&A for us. One thing I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention that this is the world premiere for Desperation, right? Is it, Wendy?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention that and tell you that we're thrilled to have the world premiere, and congratulations on your film.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted everyone to know that. So let's see, can we start with all of you introducing yourselves, saying your name, and maybe a short synopsis of your film so that our audience can connect your faces with the films they just saw in the shorts program. And why don't we start with Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Nguyen. I was the cinematographer for Running Shadow. And I'm here with my producer, Joyce. And our film is about a Native American Lakota woman trying to essentially make a life for her own and move on from the death of her sister. And if Joyce has anything to add.
I'm Joyce Liu, Countryman. I'm the co-writer producer of Running Shadow. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And so really this is a story about how one young Lakota woman is trying to reclaim her own, like really find herself through running. And so because running is such a really large part of the Lakota culture, really bring that back to where she finds her center and how she can really run on her own terms, away from the family legacy and the guilt and the trauma of her sister's suicide. So it's about healing, and healing really and finding yourself through running.
Nahyeon?
Hello, kia ora everybody. I'm the writer-director of the film 16. My pronouns are she, her. And 16 is a coming-of-age short film which blends the two worlds of this young Korean teenager, Yejin, her kind of K-pop romantic fantasies, and also kind of the more domestic vignettes of her home life that she's ashamed of. And it's kind of a look at the intergenerational disconnection between mother and daughter in a diaspora.
Eris?
Hi, I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Eris. I am the writer-director of short film Mother Tongue. My pronoun is she, her. Going off of what Nahyeon was saying, Mother Tongue was also a mother-daughter story about the intergenerational gap. And it follows this Chinese-American second-generation woman's internal journey of remembering her mom's last days after the mom has lost English to Alzheimer's while the daughter doesn't speak Chinese.
Wendy?
Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm the director for Desperation, which is I would say, action short film about a young lady defending her family from two home invaders.
Great. Okay, I'm going to start and throw out a question to Eris, but I also want to encourage all the filmmakers to chime in or add comments if you have them. And I forgot to do it, but this is Susan again, and I'm going to try to have us say our names before we talk so that people who aren't able to see this can know who's talking. Okay, so Eris, I was wondering if you could talk about how language plays a role in your exploration of memory, love, and grief in your film.
Thank you, Susan. Hi, this is Eris talking. So I was born and raised in mainland China, and my family had its own kind of immigration experience even within China. My paternal grandmother, therefore, speaks a certain dialect which I don't speak, and I only speak Mandarin. So growing up, I was aware of the language barrier between us, but I never doubted the fact that she absolutely loved me dearly. And I think it was ever since 15 years ago, she got Alzheimer's, and she was really deteriorating, and it was just very painful to watch her fade away, and also even more painful to watch my dad try to communicate with her. And I think that kind of planted a seed inside of me to really think about grieving even when your beloved is still here in this world. And I came to the US at 20 years old. I came here to study, and it was really the first time to encounter this question about identity, like, who am I? Because in the first 20 years of my life, I was a majority in the society I was living in. And, language became the center of my identity because I didn't speak English as well. And I definitely had an accent, and I didn't know some of the slangs, and, made a lot of, got into a lot of funny jokes because of that. And I just didn't understand why, someone would not be seen as the whole person if he or she is not able to communicate the personality fully in the language. And, and year after year, of course, my command of the language became better, but then I also started to reflect on, how people are treating me differently, essentially. It's very strange. It's like all of a sudden, oh, I'm a person in your eyes just because now I speak the language better. So the film really explores identity that's centering around language, and also just shines a light on the issue within the Asian immigrant community, because according to some data, the second generation Asian immigrants, only like around 60% of them speak their heritage language compared to, Hispanic immigrants. So I just really wanted to kind of highlight the beauty of the language and help us reflect on heritage language loss along the lines of grieving, I think.
Wow. Yeah, thanks.
I would love to jump in and talk a little bit about language in my short, if that was okay.
Yes.
So this is Nahyeon speaking, and I really resonated with so much of what Eris was just speaking about in terms of language. I think for a lot of Asian diaspora generations, language is so prickly, our relationships to it. So I was very particular in my short film 16 to kind of subtly weave that into the dialogue. So I intentionally had my protagonist Yejin speak only English to her Korean speaking mother, to weaponize it and make it difficult for her mother to understand her, as if she was not taking the steps forward for that connection. And it's only really in the fantasy scene that she has her monologue to her mother that she speaks in Korean, where she is wanting to reach out and wanting to actually connect with her mother tongue, but also her mother's language. And so I just wanted to quit it all with Eris and just chime in a little bit about that.
Yeah,
too.
that's great. That's great. I also want to welcome, it's Tiffany, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, there. Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm welcome. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
you made it.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I blame some traffic, but
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you introduce yourself and say a little bit about the short synopsis of your film. And
So hello everyone, my name is Tiffany Francis. I am the writer and director of Hello from Taiwan, which is about a Taiwanese American family who struggled to reunite after being separated for 1 year, half of them in Taiwan and half of them in San Jose, California. And it's told through the eyes of a young child named Christy, who is 5 years old.
great. Well, let's see. Can I just ask you the next question? Are you okay? I wanted to talk about how your film starts with this precipitating event. And in your film, it's an earthquake, and how you made that metaphor of the rift in the family and this jarring earthquake. And so if you could talk about that, how you began your story that way and how you played off of that.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that I actually really experienced personally in my real life, was the earthquake. And then when I was writing the film, it took a while for me to process it and for it to become a metaphor. But eventually I realized I wanted a way to show how Christy was navigating her, her, like just a feeling like of being settled or unsettled within her family, and how that was sort of like internalized, but I wanted to show that in a visual way. So I didn't want it to be like an obvious thing where she would, she's just watching her parents and that's it, so I think I needed a way to kind of show that there was a little bit of like trauma that she was going through, but very subconsciously. And so that was kind of a way I could do that. And then it was actually processed through a lot of different ways as I went through pre-production, and like with the DP and stuff. We, had talked about like the crack being sort of a motif throughout the film. And so we thought of like specific places where it emotionally felt right to do that. And so, yeah, that's where you see it, is like where it ends up being, like in the car, and also when she's at school and her sister kind of lets go of her hand. Just those like key moments, just enough to let you know that she's like going through something, but then also the foundation of her life is sort of just being shaken up.
Yeah, it's very cool. It was really effective.
Thank you. A lot of work in the VFX department for sure.
Yeah. And Wendy, I wanted you also to talk about in your film starts as a result of an apocalypse. There are people who are desperate and robbing this person's house or apartment. And if you can talk about how you came up with that idea of the apocalypse in order to in order to express the theme of your film.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Wendy. Thank you for having me here. So we actually came up with the idea during the pandemic because we were bored and we want to make something. And at the time, it was towards the beginning of this pandemic, and a lot of news about, Asians being attacked was happening. And, it was a slightly scary time for everyone, just because no one's sure what's going on. And, we were all having discussions about just, a lot of time people aren't against Asian per se, but they're afraid and they don't know what's happening. And that fear makes people desperate and do desperate things. And that's kind of what I want to explore with the story. So, like, for example, when one of the robbers, when they came in, they try not to hurt people, but they also need to do what they gotta do, right? And things just kind of escalated from there, which I think a lot of times is what happens in the world when people are scared, when they're not thinking clearly, when they're just running on self-preservation. They just do things that they don't normally want to do. And at the end, when one of the other robber, when the girl seeing that, the girl's protecting someone really close to her, like a sick person in their home, and that's when kind of the tension was diffused, because at the end what kind of trumps desperation, what hopefully is the idea of sympathy, to, when we can take a pause and kind of really relate to one another. That's when we are able to kind of create a more of a peaceful transitions and be able to really end up helping each other. So that is the idea, is when, to explore what humanity do during a desperate time, which I'm sure we're all being very tried by that by now. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. I loved that empathy piece. That was perfect for a film taking place in apocalyptic times. Yeah. Let's see. I also wanted to ask Nahyeon, the blending of the different styles that you use in your film. So you have Yejin's electric K-pop fantasy sequences juxtaposed with her very domestic scenes with her mother. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this is Nahyeon. Thank you, Susan, for the question. I think so much of being a teenager feels really chaotic. And I also think that there is so much private life. There's a lot of compartmentalization where when you're a teenager, you begin to start having secrets and hiding things from your parents and what they might disapprove of or what you think that they might disapprove of. So I think that, and from that, I really felt like there was a rift that began to open up between a lot of mother and daughter relationships. So I really wanted to explore the contrast of these two worlds between Yejin's fantasies and her life with her boyfriend, and then kind of the scenes with her mother. And I think that I tried to do that with color and animation, but also I did also want to extend this to kind of the linguistic differences that I kind of spoke to earlier, and also kind of this the ways that they held space together, but there were so many secrets when they were even in the same frame together. So I kind of wanted to use these styles to drive the disconnect between her world and what she felt was the world that she was running away from. Yeah.
I really like that. I think all of us have had the conversations in our head that we want to have. And then there's the conversations that we actually have with people. It's really cool the way you did that in your film.
Yeah, I think it's quite bittersweet kind of growing up, because I think it's really hard. And I think the reality is sometimes a lot of these things remain a little bit unresolved, and maybe that's the cynic coming out in me, but I think it's a difficult conversation to have. So to keep holding on to that fantasy maybe is a bit of a coping mechanism. But in a strange way, although my film does end a little bit more bittersweet, in the making of this film, it was really precious because I had to get because my Korean's not very good, so I had to get my mother to help me translate parts of the script together, particularly that last scene. And it was actually really difficult and heartbreaking, but it was also a moment of healing to work with her to kind of talk through the scene. And in the process of translating it, we really had a lot of healing and recovery. So yeah.
What did your mom think of the film?
I think our moms, my mom was strange. She had so many years of being brutally honest, and then she softened up, and now she's like, I love everything that you do. And now I'm kind of like, I can't figure you out. So I think she likes it, but I do admit that she is now come around to becoming my greatest supporter, and I really love her. So that's a little
sweet
moment of sincerity.
That's great.
Parents give us tons to work on as artists, right? They're like the fodder.
Yeah.
So when they get supportive, you're like, no, I need this. Like
yeah. Especially
Absolutely.
when you're 16, you need drama too.
Yeah.
And Joyce and Brian, I would like you to talk about your film, and specifically if you could talk about how you thought about putting this film together and the choice of gaze, if you could talk about that term, and who the idea about who gets to tell whose story to whom. It's an important idea that runs throughout our festival, actually. And if you could talk a little bit about that. And I think also you had some input from you had cultural conversations or cultural feedback in order to make sure that you got this film right. And maybe even what prompted this film about a Native American runner as opposed to another runner.
I'll speak really briefly about what inspired this film, like why this came about, and then I'll let Brian kind of speak from the gaze perspective as really the driver of our visual, like our visual language. So this was done at AFI when we were still graduate students there. So this is our thesis film. And I was very struck. I'm a very strong advocate and ally and accomplice for diversity and inclusion. And so I felt like we didn't have Native voices in our program. We didn't have Indigenous filmmakers. And so this happened right around, like we were in school during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. And both Carlos and I, the director, also co-writer, we really wanted to go, but we couldn't because we were in school. And so we thought, how can we still amplify these voices and stories, and knowing that we can't be there to support physically, right? And so that kind of inspired us to say we should, we want to tell a story that's about Indigenous, characters, recognizing that we're not Indigenous. So it's like, how do we do this in the right way? Because we also don't want to like co-opt someone's story. We don't want to appropriate someone's perspective. So we engaged, actually they were twins. They're cultural consultants that they themselves are from the Pine Ridge Reservation where the story is centered. And so it was great having them. They came on board with us to really walk, like when we did our development process, we vetted everything by them. And they said, we were able to be like, does this sound about right? Do you feel like we're appropriating? How, so we checked with them all throughout the development process. When we got to the script process, they even were on set. They came on set. They were actually, it was great having them, right? And so really through the whole thing, it was like, for us, it was really, really, really critical that we did not co-opt someone's voice or perspective and really tried to authentically, try to be as authentic as possible in the story and the perspective. And I think that extends then to how we shot the film, which is the I'll pass over to Brian.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way we approached the film was it kind of stemmed from that. And that was really very, very important to us and really the core of the thesis. So it's funny because I don't necessarily think during pre-production we spoke about the representation in terms of the word gaze, but we were really just trying to create the most authentic representation, which was actually funneled through our character. And, from a DP's perspective, I always talk about subjectivity versus objectivity. And within the world of the film, we were really trying to give this subjective look through our main character, Gemma. And that kind of trickles down to everything, lighting, lens choice, and really how we kind of portray this world and show what she's going through that lens, if that makes sense. And I guess when we do say that, obviously none of our core team are Indigenous Americans, we did gather references from documentaries, and the visual references were really from journalists as well. That's what I shared with my director, Carlos. And it's really just a question of how do we authentically portray this world? And along with that, we did have the cultural consultants that we would just funnel through everything through. And it was funny because even the actors who come from reservations, they were very surprised of how we were able to create this whole world. And in the middle of LA, they said, wow, it looks just like the reservation.
I know, that's amazing.
I don't know if it was a gift or a curse, but we happened to shoot during the rainiest days of the entire year in March. And so it, because we shot in Northridge in this house, like this plot of land with like abandoned houses, by the way. But because it was so rainy, right? They're like, oh, this is exactly what the reservation looks like after it rains. It was like muddy and like cold and like, it was like, yeah. So I think the weather helped us out, but Brian can speak to like how it washed us out as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a blessing and a curse because one of our locations that we were supposed to spend 2 days at just got completely washed away. So we basically had to rewrite half the film and try to incorporate what we had previously shot with what we were supposed to be shooting.
Wow.
And yeah, it just kind of, it helped add to the look of the film, but it created so many complications, like just in terms of running lighting, and just, I think we broke like 2 or 3 lights that were very, very expensive because of just the torrential downpour of rain.
Wow. Wow. Well, I have to say, as a film festival in Eugene, Oregon, we are thrilled to have a film that focuses on running as being Tracktown USA. So it's pretty cool that we could have your film in our program. So
I will say we also had a running consultant. So we actually had someone who was like, this is how your feet sit on the blocks. This is how this is what your arms do. So we were like trying very, very hard to be like, you know, creating a real world, you know? And just one more piece I want to speak about gays is that one of the benefits of having a really diverse team is that we are bicultural. So, you know, even though we're Asian American, we're not indigenous, but we do come from a world where language, food, practices, customs, they're just built into what we do. We don't explain it to anyone. And we didn't do that in our film. We didn't explain to people, this is what tobacco means to the native culture. This is why they're doing, we don't explain any of that. We're like, this is just part of their living. Just like, right, being bicultural, I don't go around explaining people what, you know, what hongbao is in the red envelope during Chinese New Year. You get one or you don't, you know, not for you to know this is what we do, right? That's how we approached the way that we told the story. It's like, we're not going to explain to you as our, you know, who's the audience. We didn't make this film for white audiences or for non-Indigenous audiences. We actually made this film for Indigenous audiences. So they would watch it and say, that's my experience, that's my world, right?
and have you had that screening, and how was it taken in?
We have screened at Native American festivals, and every time people like, at least people come up to me after, they're crying. They're like, that's my, you know, the Native audience are like, that's my dad, that's my experience. I felt it so deeply. And the funny thing is, we've had audiences who are not Native, and they're like, I don't get it. It's really inscrutable. Like, I don't understand it. And I'm like, well, I'm here to explain it to you. So sorry, you know. So very different experience for the same film based on the perspective, the identities people bring in.
Yeah, we see that a lot in film festival like DisOrient. Films play very differently to different audiences, and when you relate to a film like that and you're not used to seeing yourself in a film like that, it is very emotional to have that connection when you're not used to it. And you don't even realize you're not used to it until it happens. Yeah.
There's that great article about the ballerina who's Black, and she finally got toe shoes that like match her skin color, and how she was so moved by it because it was the first time she realized that she could have shoes that look like that, you know what I mean? Like, it's just made for her. It's normal for her now, as opposed to all my shoes are pink and they don't match my skin tone, you know? And so, yeah, the impact is profound, I think, when you see yourself in your story.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Eris. I think I wanted to just wanted to add to that because my film is actually also a cross-cultural narrative, and I encountered this kind of obstacle when I was editing, because I would be asked questions like, oh, but why is she burning paper money? What does that mean? And then there was this urge to explain it so that the general audience would understand. But the truth is, actually, they just need to understand it emotionally. They don't need to understand it intellectually. And like the way I think the film came out eventually, like after screenings, I would have, you know, audience members who are either Asian or not Asian coming to me and talk about how it touched them and how they do share a common experience that's similar, the kind of you know, sense of loss and a sense of grieving. And I think, you know, stories can be very powerful if you just, you know, throw out all the kind of Western centric idea of like, you have to explain it to me, because, you know, I come from China and we get all the Hollywood blockbusters, and well, voila, like the American lifestyle is very different from what the Chinese audience is used to, but they never explain, oh, this is how we party, this is how our teenagers have to, you know, drink and behind the parents' back. Like none of this happens in China, but like it's fine if you like. I think the audience can understand. It's just sometimes I would say like gatekeepers would tend to have this fear of, oh, no, you have to tell a story for a bigger audience. No, it's not like that.
Yeah, it sort of broadens that narrative is what they kind of say, and gives people more access to different ways of seeing things. I also thought not doing the translations in your film was really effective too. You really get that sense of what it's like to not understand or not be understood, and trying so hard to make this connection, and you can't do it with words. It's very you definitely can feel that emotion, and then you are able to switch to a different part that's not totally reliant on the words.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about language a while ago, and I think that's, you know, some things are not spoken, especially in Asian culture. Like we still perfectly understand each other, and frankly, all the Mandarin dialogue in my film, like you don't need translation to understand like what the mother is going through, right? And that's exactly what I meant by the audience just have to understand emotionally, not intellectually.
You know, I mean, keep in mind that our communication, 70% of what we communicate is nonverbal. So really, if you took away the words, you still get what's happening, right? That's actually more important. It tells us way more.
I think Tiffany.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's this is Eris again. I was gonna say that's the magic of cinema, right? It's about the visual and of course sound, but sometimes you don't need dialogue.
I think, Tiffany, you mentioned that too as part of your film, how your experience being young and not, you know, your siblings coming back and speaking another language, and just being young and not understanding and really taking in the situation in other ways as a young child does.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think it's interesting that you guys are talking about this, because I've been kind of grappling with that question of like who your audience is and what you're making as a filmmaker, and how that's being perceived, especially because like now I'm like soft pitching a lot of different ideas around town, and like hearing what executives respond to and what they don't respond to, and kind of the way that we have to shape our stories. And sometimes it feels like you do have to accommodate your stories in a way to, if it wants to be read by like a larger audience, or it become quote unquote marketable, unfortunately. And that's not why we do what we're doing. We want to be creative and we want to be authentic as much as possible. But I think it's a larger discourse that we really have to start discussing as, you know, Asian Americans specifically, because I think it's a very specific thing that we're kind of facing. You know, just for instance, like Mulan as a film, and like who wrote it, who directed it, you know, who the audience is. Are Chinese people going to like it? Maybe not, you know? So like, I just think, sorry, that I'm not even responding back to your question, but
no, that's perfect.
but I guess I'm just like, so it's just such a thing that I've been thinking a lot about and really hard about, because it is sort of affecting the way I'm also thinking about myself as a filmmaker, and how, you know, we collectively as filmmakers, like how do we shape that, you know, moving forward, and how do we go about doing that? Just throwing it out there. It's a food for thought.
Yeah, it's great. Well, we're kind of getting to the time when we need to start wrapping up, but before we close, I wanted to hear from everyone. What's in store? What's your next project? What's on the docks for you? And we want to know so we can be ready to check it out when it comes out. Yeah. Who wants to start? Joyce, you can start.
Well, I sold a show to Sony Pictures Television, so I have a half-hour Asian American-led comedy that we're developing. So hopefully it's based on a short film that is out in the circuit. So hopefully that we'll see what happens. Pandemic, who knows? And then I've got a couple of other feature films, plus a feature documentary about women's health. But I kind of work across the spectrum. So I have a Latinx genre film that is in development, and I can't say where, but you know, it's going that way. And then I've got, but anyways, I work across the spectrum. So I have another film that's African-American Black story. So we'll see. You'll see when it comes out. I'll let you know.
Yeah, busy lady. Great. How about you, Brian?
I have been shooting 2 feature docs, and I'm shooting a feature narrative next week. So I've been hard at work, just shooting every day, and hopefully one of the docs will come out at the end of the year, and the other, unfortunately, was put on hold because of COVID. And a lot of that story, it was an Asian story, a Vietnamese American story, actually. And yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
Great. We hope to see it coming into DisOrient.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Nahyeon, what about you?
Like everyone, I'm sure we're all developing our little scripts on the side. So I'm working on a couple of feature films that I've gone through development labs for. So that's kind of in the back burner, but maybe more pressing. I am writing, directing a part of an anthology feature that we hope to go into production at the later half of this year, but we'll see. Who knows with the world these days? It could end tomorrow. Oh, yeah. Maybe don't put that.
But it's not, because yeah, it's maybe for you, not for us.
Yeah, it'd be the day after tomorrow.
Yeah, it's still Saturday.
Yes. And that's me.
Thank you. Eris, how about you?
Yeah, I also had a short that I was planning to shoot last summer, but then pandemic happened, and it was also about Asian American identity, and this time from a teenager girl's perspective, and centered around food, and that we were just talking about food. I'm also developing a feature and a 1-hour drama / action show, and yeah, fingers crossed. I think just keep writing is the best thing we could do in this special time.
Great. Wendy?
Yeah, I have a music video that's coming out at the end of the month. I guess by the time that this is releasing, you will be out already. And that one has a lot of fighting as well, so I'm pretty excited about that one. And in March, we are going to go to production for another short film. This one's gonna be like a cute boy meets girl sort of a vibe, so something a little bit different. And yeah, my producer and I also in post-production just working our way through this documentary about Asian American mental health. And then yeah, we're also looking just for other scripts that we can work with. So if you guys know any good writers.
I think we have some right here. And you'll have to give us the information when that music video comes out, and we'll post it to our peeps.
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
great.
it'd be fun to see. Yeah. And Tiffany, how about you?
Yeah, well, I wrote Hello from Taiwan actually as a pilot, so shopping the series right now. And then I also am like in post on a mini doc about a Black-owned beauty supply store in South LA, which I'm really excited about. And I'm working on a couple features and TV show ideas, so I'm excited to develop that as well.
Wow. Wow, it's so great to see you are also busy and being creative and moving forward with your work. That's wonderful. Okay, I think we'll call that good. I want to thank you all for being on this Q&A. It's been really wonderful, and such an honor for us to have your films in our festival and to have you here speaking to us about it. So thank you, and I wish you all well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you all do so much for the community. So thank you for all the work you do in like bringing DisOrient and like really like thank you for what you and Ham do and the whole team.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, especially all the films that we get to see. That's best part. We get to see all the films. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay.